Hi everyone, Arabel here with Chic Innovator. I want to introduce you to a very good friend of mine who will be our guest on this podcast, Jared Kirchheimer. He is now a writer, a director, and a producer of a film called Say Her, in which he also stars. This movie is dedicated to helping at-risk youth in Chicago. As a matter of fact, a portion of the proceeds will go to help those individuals. I met Jared when he was working as a civil engineer for a company. We were working on a project together with AAR Tech and the firm he was with. And it was a long time ago, and since then, his life has gone through many, many changes. As a matter of fact, he's lost over 30 pounds. He's been involved in so many transformations and has really upgraded his life. It's very exciting for me as a friend to see that. He's also been involved in supporting Runway Latinx, which is an event that I do. It's a fashion show to raise funds for Pivoting in Heels, a non-for-profit that empowers women. He's done an amazing job with everything that he does, especially this project. Now, as you watch the podcast, you may end up hearing us say, embody a better you. That's a former name for this, but as all of you know, we do want you to embody a better you, but it is now called Chic Innovator. So without further ado, here we go with the interview with my very good friend, incredible individual, Jared Kirchheimer.
But I have to tell you, something else struck me as I watched this, and that was the photography in this. The way it was filmed, the way it was edited. I mean, that's just, he did an amazing job. That's like Academy Award level stuff that he did, in my view.
That is so wonderful to hear you say that.
You're watching Chic Innovator. Stay tuned for fascinating topics, fascinating people that have style and are innovative. You're watching Chic Innovator. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free. So, Jared, so excited to have you here. We've known each other for so long now, and I know that it's been your dream, since I met you several years ago and way before that. I met you as an engineer.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that watch this by now know that I own a company, AAR Tech. It's a technology firm. And so I met you at that side of life.
Right.
Companies were doing some business together. But I know you had this lifelong ambition to create a movie, to be in the movies. You're a triple threat, right? Because you're
Thank you.
a writer, you're a producer, and you're acting in this
Right.
particular movie.
Right.
But what pivotal moment took place that got you to actually, move the lever and now get this done?
Right. So a lot of people didn't know that I had a film company set up on the side because I was working so many hours as an engineer all these
Yeah,
years.
I did. I knew.
Yeah, you knew. And so having worked as a construction engineer in a lot of the most challenging neighborhoods in the city, I saw a lot of the gun violence up close and personal, and it just, when you're a sensitive person, it hits you to the core because you're thinking about all the children, these innocent kids that are in the neighborhoods and having to listen to the gunshots every day, and that's what we heard every day. I was on job sites where we'd be having a meeting outside and someone would pull out a machine gun and they'd be shooting right on the expressway, literally 100 feet from us.
A machine gun? Oh
yes.
My gosh.
And those are the things, it didn't happen every day, but in the summer, hot summer, you would see it a lot. And the one pivotal moment, because I always wanted to make a film that really focuses on the plight of at-risk youth in Chicago especially, and the gun violence that unfortunately we're known for, throughout the world. The one event that you're referring to that really just made me say, now is the time I have to leave engineering and do this full time was, I was in my office on a construction site. I got a phone call, frantic phone call, that one of my employees was murdered on site in a company vehicle. So that's all I heard. I called 911 as I was going out of the office, and there was some issue because it was on a state route. So they had to get the state police involved, and I got put on hold, and I was so frantic I hung up because I knew that there was already emergency people heading to the scene. And I ran across the live lanes of an expressway. I made sure that nobody was going to have an accident, and luckily I'm pretty fast. I ran track.
I'm sure your heart's beating really fast.
Yeah, it was a lot of adrenaline.
And,
and so I get there, and what ended up happening was the employee was okay. He had witnessed someone come into the work zone, and it appeared that they were under duress. So he went toward them to go check on them, which is something we usually do.
Mm-hmm.
And another vehicle pulled in to the work zone at that time and got out with an Uzi. And
what time was this during?
It was the middle of the day.
Middle of the day, okay.
2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Not even at night. I mean, this
No.
middle of the day, everybody's on the work site.
Right.
My goodness.
Everybody's on the work site.
Yeah.
And so he immediately saw this happen. He started running the other direction. He had left his vehicle running with the door open when he had initially got out to go check on this person. And he went and hid behind another vehicle or a piece of equipment. And the second vehicle that came in, he got out and he pursued this person. The person tried to get in our vehicle and drive away. He was unsuccessful, and he was executed in the vehicle. Sorry.
Wow.
So,
that is...
And the reason it hit so hard, I was fortunate that our employee was okay, but I had to go in and pull out some of his belongings from the vehicle, like his laptop and, keys and stuff like that. When I went to do that, there was blood and guts and everything all over it. And I'd seen this type of stuff so much in the city that you're just immune to it. And I wiped it off on my pants, and I went and gave him his equipment back. And
it's like a war zone.
It is.
You were in the middle of a war zone.
It is. And then the one thing I'll never get out of my head, there was no child in the vehicle, but there was a car seat in there for a kid. And that was just tore up with bullet holes, and that's just something.
Because it could have been a child, which we've unfortunately witnessed.
Yes, and it's just something. Seeing
gosh.
bullet holes in a car seat is just something so fundamentally wrong with that. So when that happened, and I saw that event, I knew that I was going to have to leave my notice, and I gave plenty of notice.
Because I remember I was somewhat surprised when I got the call from you, and you said this was something that you were going to do, and now you were completely focused and you were going to get on and create that film that you've always wanted to do. But
right.
I mean, because you've been seeing this for so long, and this is gut-wrenching for you. I mean,
it is, and it's because it's really it boils down to the children. Mm-hmm. We have to find a way to get to these kids so young, and when we're seeing any kind of mental duress that's being caused by the stuff they're seeing growing up that no child should have to see, to really get them the mental health help that they need, and the guidance and the mentoring and all the good stuff that they need.
So did you start writing right away? Because I know that was intense, right? So this, I mean, it sort of pushed the passion forward, and then you started writing pretty much immediately, or did you wait?
Well, another cool thing about what happened on the film side is it's a testament to how hard the film business is. Mm-hmm. So there was another movie that came about that was running side by side with mine, and that one was ready to go. So I became a producer on that one, and we had it all set to go in New York, in Buffalo, New York. And unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond my control, it collapsed at the last minute, which happens a lot. Mm-hmm. It's like a big roller coaster in the Hollywood life. And, so that at that point, I pivoted. And which is fitting with your Pivot and Heals, and all the wonderful work you do with your organizations. And I wanted to stop and say that you're not just a pillar of the community, you're a pillar of Chicago. You do so much good for Chicago, and I'm so grateful to be here with you.
And I surround myself with people that do the same, so thank you.
Thank you. But so I pivoted, and I was able to write this story relatively quickly. I had another story set in the inner city. It was actually set mostly at Mercy Home for boys and girls. That story has yet to be made, but I was able to pivot from the New York movie and get this film made, because the story I've had going for almost 25 years now, the budget's too high, and I was able to write
Which is the one you and I have talked about in the past, and I know that you raised some money for that, and have slowly, but you pushed that forward as well.
Yeah, we'll get that done, but it was just one of those things. You almost have the budget, and then someone pulls out, And I just couldn't afford to make that one. So I took some of the principles, the at-risk youth principle, the gun violence principle, and I pulled it into a totally different project so they could run independently, and I can do that one in the future. And I was able to shoot this at one location very cheaply, which was the operating factor, because I funded this with savings from my working 7 days as an engineer for the last 20 years. And
give us a synopsis about the movie, and I know that you wrote it passionately and nonstop.
Yeah.
Unfortunate incident, but this really fired you up
Right.
to write it. A lot of the movie, it's not based on you, but it's about different things that different elements that have taken place in your life,
Right.
or that you're passionate about, or that so.
There were 3 worlds that I drew from. The first one was the Olympic weightlifting world. I had the incredible fortune to train as a young kid at one of the best Olympic weightlifting facilities in Chicago called Sarah Park Weightlifting Club, which is like 6800 West Belden. And at that time, this was the 80s, we had multiple Olympians training there, and the head Olympic coach was coaching there. And I just 40 years later now, it's almost 40 years, I just remember what great mentors they all were to me, what phenomenal athletes they were, and just to have had the opportunity to witness greatness at that level, so up close and personal, was just something you never forget.
I have to just tell you, I just heard this and I so believe this. Everybody talks about now being in the flow, right? Like
Yeah.
it's important to be in the flow. But I think the great people that really do things, yes, they're in the flow, but they get there by being disciplined.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
rules and there's things that you have to learn, and then once you get all that down packed, then you can be in the flow.
Right.
So, be it Olympians or be it whatever you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for everybody to listen to, because it's not like you just kind of sit there and meditate. And, I'm all
Yeah.
about meditating and
Right.
being healthy. But you have to also be disciplined and get all that foundation in place.
Right.
And then the things flow. And it's the same thing with athletes. So,
No, it's absolutely true.
So the movie touches on that.
Yeah, and then the second world, I wanted to honor the construction world. 'Cause
Okay.
I was an engineer, I was not a construction worker, but the character I play did construction, and there's a reason why he did it. I don't want to give too much away about the movie, but there's a reason why he ended up doing construction for his majority of his adult life. And I wanted to honor the trades, because they work so hard, especially on some of the projects that I've worked on. I was fortunate enough to be an engineer on the Jane Byrne interchange, which was almost a 10-year project. And I saw how all the tradespeople, men and women, sacrificed their families to work 24 hours a day at times, without days off, work nights, come back and do a day shift, not sleeping year after year after
And
year.
some of those are really high risk. I mean, people don't realize
They are,
the
and-
level of risk that they take to get that
Yes.
done. Yeah.
And they're working so hard. And I saw this up close and personal, and I just wanted to honor them.
Yeah.
Not just in Chicago, but nationwide and worldwide, for the wonderful things that they do for us. We take a lot of the work for granted, having this beautiful infrastructure to drive through, especially in a downtown area like Chicago. And I wanted to honor them. And the last, and most fundamental part, which we've started talking about, is really to honor the kids in Chicago that are growing up in really challenged areas. And not just to honor the ones that are struggling, but to really honor the ones that are being successful and coming out of these neighborhoods and being successful in school despite having the challenges of growing up alongside this violence. I wanted to honor them, but also really kind of have a call to action for all of us to do something about this, gun violence epidemic that is known throughout the world.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I think is really important with the movie, at least it struck me, and obviously, Embody a Better You is like very dedicated to that, is the issue of mental health, right? Which is so relevant, but also prevalent in a lot of families. It's not unique, and you touch on that, in the movie.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of it that I think is important for us to as a society to kind of understand is we all have to take care of each other
Absolutely.
in some way.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a message that goes across everything you do.
Yeah.
And the different involvement that you had, but also in the movie. You know,
Right.
we have to. I think there was a quote that you shared, and you know, about if we don't think of children as our own. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so the mental health portion, which I'm glad you brought up because it's tied to the at-risk youth portion of the movie. And the mental health issues that the character Clay that I play portrays are resulting from seeing the violence on the streets and some other things that happen in his childhood that are revealed at the end. So mental health is a huge part of that. But yes, the quote you're referring to is, I wanted to make a movie to be a call to action to try to get us to help these kids in these neighborhoods for 30 years. And that entire time, I felt personally responsible for a lot of these shootings because I hadn't made the movie and I hadn't done the call to action. I hadn't raised the money through the movie to be able to help. And I feel like if you don't have that kind of pressure on yourself, if you don't feel like every one of these kids that's suffering is your own child, you don't have the drive to do anything about it. So I know a lot of people say, how could you feel responsible? But I do. And I think you have to in order to drive the change that has to occur.
Yeah, you have to think of every kid as your own, right? Because if you don't take it that seriously or that passionately, you know, then you let go of responsibility. You don't do anything about it. So, which unfortunately a lot of people do, or a lot of people kind of shove it over, you know, to one area or one other area. I do want to talk a little bit about. I want you to share with us because you have this passion for Mercy Home.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that and, you know, share with us. Because I know since as long as I've known you, right, I think that was like probably one of the first conversations we had was about the work that is done there. How did that come to the forefront in your life? Right. And I know that's also a part of the movie in a way. So share with us a little bit about
Mercy
that.
Home is such a hidden gem in Chicago. I mean, some people that grew up here in the city know it, but a lot of people in the suburbs and other neighborhoods of Chicago don't. But so I first got in touch with Mercy because when I started working as an engineer, I just always had a passion for helping kids. So I found Mercy Home, and I was able to tutor and mentor kids after work, you know, a few days a week, and I was able to do that for a few years. But then I got so busy working so many hours that I had to kind of veer away from that, but still stay involved financially as much as I could. To the extent that I did well every year, I tried to give a little bit. But what I learned volunteering there and tutoring there was seeing up close the incredible work that they were doing. You know, they're bringing in kids. They could be anywhere from 6 years old to 13 years old when they arrive there. It's a live-in situation, whereas every situation is different. They get them in school. They have tutoring for them. They have sports programs. They have religious programs for them if they want that. And they're just, again, they're like you. They're a pillar of Chicago. And
Thank you.
There should be 100 of these facilities. If there were, we wouldn't have all this violence that we're seeing. But they cost so much to maintain. You know, they're funded by donations and. That's why I've always loved just having seen up close all the good they do. And even when kids leave there, like say they graduate high school, they have an aftercare program and they can always come back for therapy or anything that they need. And they have great therapy for all the kids throughout their stay there.
That's amazing. And I know you and I talked a little bit about the ROI, you know, how do you measure? Because, you know, for people that want to get involved and that want to give and that want to help, and their stats are incredible, and it's ongoing, right? I mean, some of these kids grow up and they do become successful. They come from very sad beginnings, but they're able to make and they come back and then they support other kids.
Yes.
Which is great.
And that's, so with 50% of the personal income I make from the movie, you know, I want to give a portion of that to Mercy Home and the other agency. I'm not limiting the amount of agencies. I want to be open because something might, by the time the movie gets seen and out there, you know, there might be a new agency on the horizon that's doing well. But I also really love what Arnie Duncan is doing at Chicago Cred.
Yeah, you know Arnie, I think I told you,
Yeah,
Arnie
yeah.
and Arnie Duncan, who's
Yeah.
former Secretary of Education, and he was the head of education here, Chicago Public Schools. So he and I, you know, go way back. We were in leadership Greater Chicago, and so we're part of the same alumni. And it's we try to meet like once every 6 months, a group of us that are involved with that. It's an interesting group. Like that particular group of alumni, the people that are involved in there have all done exceptionally well.
It's really
and
cool,
Arnie, you know, heart of gold. I mean,
Yes.
he came back to Chicago, and then he started Cred. So tell us a little bit about Cred, because, you know, he is right in the heart of Chicago, in some of the roughest areas, and he just has never given up. I mean,
I love everything he's doing. I really wanted to call attention to what the violence interrupters are doing at Cred. So individuals that grew up in a given neighborhood that's maybe a hotbed for the shootings, they have the most credibility because the neighborhood knows them. They've maybe been through similar things. They might have had some gang involvement, or they might have had other criminal involvement. And now they want to go in and change the game and make things better for everyone. So they're going to the hotbed when they hear of a shooting that's potentially developing. They're going right into the thick. They're running into the fire. So they're heroes, and they're the biggest heroes I can think of, the work they're doing. And my thought is, let's get a massive amount of funding available for agencies like Chicago Cred. Pay these heroes that are doing this incredible work so they can take wonderful care of their family and also recruit others from the neighborhood to an opportunity where, hey, I can make good money doing good. And changing my neighborhood for the better and making sure that my kid doesn't have to go through all the hardship that I went through. I really have a vision about that, of paying these heroes really, really well, but it takes a lot of money to do that. But my thought is, once you're paying these heroes really, really well, it's not going to be hard to recruit others from the neighborhood to want to make a change, and this can branch out through all the neighborhoods that Chicago Cred is working in. They're just doing incredible stuff.
Yeah, they are. I know he's been active and helping out, you know, for so long. With regards to the movie, because we're all, you know, really excited about it. I know that you're going to have a couple of showings, because I know that you put so much of your heart and soul in it. Reveal to us, like, what is some of the passion behind it, that there's no way that somebody should miss this movie. Tell us why.
No, thank you. So Clay, the character that I play, so he has a rough childhood. In addition to having a rough childhood, he seen a lot of things on the street that human beings should not see. And between those two factors, the childhood and witnessing what he saw, he developed some pretty major mental health issues. Despite the fact that he's developed those mental health issues, he has this moral compass, and he just wants to do good, even though he's seen all this evil, and he went through so much as a young kid. He just wants to make things better for kids. And like a lot of us, we set high goals for ourselves, and we fail. So, his initial goal as to how he wanted to go and contribute and help kids like himself, it didn't pan out. That I don't want to reveal too much about that, but the weightlifting part is pretty straightforward, and that I can talk about. He was drawn to weightlifting because it was a way to put all his pain and agony into something where he's not hurting another person. If he's getting hurt, and he does get hurt, and that's one of the reasons he doesn't make it to the Olympic Games, which was one of his biggest goals, because he felt like, just like an NFL quarterback can go back into the neighborhood and say, look, I made it, you can be okay, you can come from this area and be okay. lifting was his thing. He said, if I can make it to the Olympics, then I can go back and tell the kids that are like me, that have mental health challenges for the same reasons I have them, that they can be okay and I can be an inspiration for them. So when he didn't make the games, it was such a devastating thing for him.
Jared, you're very passionate about
so
this.
Passionate.
I mean, I can feel
so
it like
passionate,
bubbling
yeah.
up in you.
No,
like,
it's,
has weightlifting been there at other pivotal moments in your life that have kind of helped you get through, some of the emotion
always,
or passion?
always has.
Yeah.
Whether it's weightlifting competitively or whether just weightlifting on my own for fitness or running. I've always, sports, ever since I was a little kid, I needed them. Because to be honest, I had, as a little kid, like about 9 years old, I started getting really, really sensitive. And I hated seeing bullies, I hated seeing crime, I hated seeing all that stuff, and it made me really, really angry. And I didn't want to turn that anger into being someone that would physically hurt someone because I was so angry, didn't know how to control it. So I picked sports as an outlet, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, well, and 100%. I mean, I think
Yeah.
for some of the kids that we're talking about, right? I mean, I grew up the first part, like elementary school, in a very rough area.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for sports, I mean, my parents made me get into everything. I was first place freestyle in Chicago. It was funny, but if it wasn't for all that, I would have gotten in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And it was just, all kinds of sports. And I think sports are so important to what we're talking about with kids. I mean, because you've got so much anger when you're a kid, or passion, or you're seeing all this stuff go around you, and a lot of times you're confused because nobody has a clear answer for you.
Right.
And so if you can put it into a sport, and it sounds like this is such a great sport. I never thought of that, but it sounds like it's been a good vehicle for you, and obviously for this individual in the movie.
Right. Cool thing is, like, a lot of the inner cities have boxing and football and all that great stuff, but there's not a huge presence for this sport.
Right.
But I talked to the USA Weightlifting about potentially, having more gyms in Chicago. But yeah, it's just, that's why I liked it, and that's why I chose it for Clay.
And how was that? I mean, I know that you've done some acting, obviously, in the past.
Yeah.
And so how was that being in your own movie?
It was the hardest part of the process, because I wrote it at a library, because we were talking days ago about I have 3 pups at home, and I love them, but I can't work.
Well, people who know me well know also I have my Starbucks I go to, which is like it's so funny. I have this big home, and then I go to Starbucks to do a lot of writing and everything else. And even though it's so noisy, yours is a library, but you find peace.
You find your spot.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
So I wrote it at the library, and then I would go to run lines in my car, in the parking lot, and I did that for days and days.
Oh, really?
And weeks and weeks. And that was before we had the rehearsal process with the actors.
Yeah.
And we did not a lot of movies have a lot of rehearsal.
So who directs it?
I directed it.
Oh, you directed it too.
So I directed it, I wrote it, I produced it, I was the catering manager, the transport. It's just one of those things everybody does.
Not triple, quadruple.
Yeah, but everybody on the movie, and thank you everyone. There's no movie without the entire team.
Yes, exactly.
They're incredible.
Right? Yeah.
Everybody had multiple roles.
Yes.
But the hardest part for me was the performance, especially because as the director and producer, and the budget's going off in your head, so I have to get that out of my head when the camera's rolling. And that's a challenge.
Oh, trust me, I know.
Yeah.
The budget, I know people, and that's bottom line. And you've got to, if you're producing something, you've got to be very conscious of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, then you've got to completely dive into now being an actor.
Such an incredible experience, and the whole team was so good. And I literally had to pinch myself every time someone said yes. Becca Morello, who played Mo in the movie, she was phenomenal. And also when she wasn't performing.
And she's a Chicago actor, right?
Yeah. And when she wasn't performing, she's taking care of the lighting. She's taking care of holding the mics. She's doing everything, and everyone was like that. Lauren Litwin, who has hair and makeup.
So I have to tell the audience that Jared he's like, no, I'm going to be there early. I'll help you with the lighting and all this other stuff. I'm like, no, Jared, come at the time we're giving. No, but I'm using, because you're probably so used to, jumping in and doing it all.
I'm just used to being
and I
early.
Appreciated that.
No. I just like to be early because I never want to keep anyone waiting.
Yeah.
So I always arrive early and
We're just happy you're here. We're happy.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the camera person we had who actually he did all our sound and editing. His name's Mike Simic. He is phenomenal. There's just no movie without all of the actors, all of the helpers.
Well, I think you and I feel the same. We need our team, right? It's a good team that makes it good.
Yes, and everyone's just as important as everybody else, and
yes.
that's why we felt so much love for each other.
Yeah.
Because that's how we all felt.
Talk about, though, your mental state, right? Because it's a lot that you're doing. We're both workaholics. We know that. We tend to hang out with workaholics. Yeah. Although I think some people think I don't work because they see I have a pretty happy, fun life. But you and I both know that in order to get to doing what you want to do, you have to do the work behind it. Yeah. But mentally, like, how did you get yourself in the frame? Because you wrote it and then you had to get a team in place. And then I didn't know that you were directing it as well.
Yeah.
But how do you mentally prepare yourself each day for really intense days? Because they're long days.
Yes. So I'm a really devout Christian. I have been since I was a kid. In fact, my dad recently passed. One of the things I told him as he was getting close to the end, I wanted to remind him that when I was like 12 or 13 and I had a rough day at school, I don't even remember what it was, he showed me 1 Corinthians, and Paul talked about love in those sequences in the Bible, and I told him that was when you did that, your job as a dad was done, because that one act he did set me for life, because I became a very devout Christian after that, after reading about love in 1 Corinthians, and so a big part of my day is praying and reading scripture in the morning and in the evening. And in the morning, once I get that done, I just feel so refreshed and joyous and ready to go to work. And
so that sets your day in the morning for sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and because the work that I'm doing, it's such a shared thing. Like when you make a film, you just want to share and connect with everyone, the entire world. That's the whole point of making the movie. You want to connect on a deep level and share something. And and aside from that, we're really, targeting being able to financially help these great organizations in Chicago. So I feel so much joy and so much good that's going to come out of it. It just keeps me so motivated. And when you're thinking about other people, we've talked about this before, when you're working for others and not just for yourself, it's such a freeing, wonderful.
Well, it creates a purpose, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people forget. You have to have a purpose in your life. Otherwise, you're just kind of floating aimlessly,
right.
And that's where you get frustrated, or that's where you sometimes feel that your life isn't worth it.
Right.
But especially when there's a purpose behind it, and the purpose is helping others, it makes such a huge impact, and it motivates you to do more. So
it is, and we're visionaries, and some people make fun of visionaries and say you're too idealistic, but we have to.
We get called a little crazy. I mean, I've been called a little. How are you going to do that? There's no way, right?
Absolutely, but we talked about this offline, days ago, that everything starts in the mind. If we can educate our children as young as possible to just have a very positive mindset. You don't throw a punch unless your mind tells you to do it. You don't throw a hurtful word at someone unless your mind tells you to do it. You don't pull the trigger. If we get control of our mind and have it under the control of love and good and helping one another. To me, the strongest thing you can do is identify a person in trouble and want to help them. That's a lot stronger than dominating them physically or dominating them with words or trying to exert your physical or mental or spiritual control over somebody else. I think it's really important to want to uplift others, and that's the true strength. That's the only strength to me that there is.
So tell me, because, and you and I have talked about this, we're also control freaks, right? We want every little detail. we want the best as humanly possible. We want it to go well, to look good, to be good. Yet at the same time, I think you and I are similar in the way that we clearly understand that once you get to a certain point and you have physically done everything possible, and mentally, have done everything possible, then there's a point where you have to let it go.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that, because I know that you letting go, especially with the film and with everything else, has brought to you like an incredible team.
Right.
You made it within budget, which is unheard of.
Right.
And you did it in a short period of time, everything from the writing to the actual movie. So let's talk about that, because that applies, at least in my life, to so many other things in life as well. And it's obviously, applied to this movie.
No, and for me, it really stems from a religious point of view. I put in all the work I had to, and then I just said, okay, I'm letting go now. You're in charge. I didn't consider myself the director. God is the director. I didn't consider myself the writer or the actor. I just said, use me to do your good. And that's what I wanted. And that's all I'll ever want. And I think, because we prepared and we let go in that manner, and we had fun. We had a lot of joy. We have, if anyone's watching on Instagram now, and we'll talk about that later, but anybody who could follow us at Say Her Film, SayHerFilm on Instagram, it's huge, because we're working to show our distributor, actually, Sony Pictures Classics has been mentoring me. We talked about this for years and years and years. They saw the movie, but it's very common these days to have the filmmaker generate the buzz. In the old days, it wasn't like that, but now it's like that. So we're really pushing hard on social media just to get people to click follow. That's all you have to do, and it's one of the ways we're showing Sony that we have an audience.
So what's the handle? Tell them again.
Yeah.
Tell us
Say
again.
Her Film. SayHerFilm, all one word. We'd be so grateful if you just take a moment to click follow, because it's just one of the ways we're showing Sony Classics that we have an audience. And the other things we're doing is amazing opportunities like this. So thank you so much for
thank
this.
you for being here. And hashtag the same, right? Say Her Film.
Yes.
The hashtag. So use the hashtag.
Yes.
Again, there's so many components that this hits.
Right.
Helping children,
Right.
supporting those with mental health issues, trying to reduce the violence, in the city.
Yes.
Such a long-term impact, but a lot of miracles. Tell us about some of the miracles that occurred, with you letting go.
Yeah, so just like be able to meet our days. Like we had a 5-day shooting schedule, and we actually had really, really restrictive hours, because Sarah Park Weightlifting Club, this legendary gym that I trained at as a kid, is a Chicago Park District building. So we had very limited hours a day.
And I know one of the other things that you mentioned, apart from writing it yourself, getting the team that you wanted, but and to me, this is so important as well. Music is such an important part of life.
Yes.
I think it's a very spiritual thing, right? It can motivate you, elevate you, etc. So tell us about the music.
So that's another huge miracle that happened. So just having been in the industry for so many years, it's been almost 30 years since I've been trying to do this. It took that long. And a very dear friend of mine who I actually lived in New Jersey with. I cheated. I was trying to be an actor in New York, but I couldn't afford living in New York, so I lived in New Jersey with my friend George, and I slept on a wood floor literally with no mattress for a year. That's kind of a rite of passage for any actor.
Yeah.
And we developed an incredible friendship, and years later he ends up being neighbors and friends with Tim Robbins' brother, David Robbins, who scored Dead Man Walking with Sean Penn and Susan Sarandon and a lot of other amazing movies. And he introduced us, and David agreed to score the film.
It's amazing. That's like
beautiful
incredible.
music.
I mean, that's so huge.
And that's the first music miracle. The second music miracle is I have a very dear friend I went to high school with who's been a musician for over 30 years, and he was a SAG actor, very gifted actor. But he switched full-time into music, and he's in LA. And he had written 5 original songs years ago. But when I listened to these songs, after the movie was shot, it was as if they were written for the movie. It was complete destiny. Mm-hmm. So I had a contract with him.
They were written for the movie, and now the time came.
That's exactly what we talked about
right.
With him.
Yeah.
And I was able to get these 5 songs, and they're so beautiful. So between Freddie Saldone's 5 tracks that we got, and David, music is just the fabric of the being of this movie. Music's so important to any film, but ours, it really is the fabric of the being.
Well, thank goodness you gave it to the greater power. Because,
yes.
You know, I think the one big thing, the big lesson that I've learned in life is that in many instances, again, being controlling, you know, you have all these details that you want, and you have this plan and you have this vision, but then when you let go, you realize that what ends up happening is sometimes so greater that you couldn't have even imagined, you know,
right. Yeah.
And that's just the coolest part of it all. And,
yeah.
you know, this movie is an example of it.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things I'd love for you to share with us, because things happen, be it karma or whatever you want to call it, is when you have the right intent, right? So you're purposeful, and then you have the right intent behind it. And, you know, your intention to help children has always been there. But there was a particular little girl that was involved in this, and can you tell us about that and your intent behind it, and, you know, helping her, and not only helping her, because she ended up becoming such a critical part of the movie.
Yeah.
Share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll tell the backstory, and then I'll talk about the actual movie portion so everybody knows. So yeah, there's a very talented young girl named Violet Sue, and she was attached for a role in the New York movie that collapsed at the last minute. And when that happened, it really broke my heart, because I had been through the ups and downs of this industry for 3 decades, and I was used to those type of things happening. But that should not happen to a 10-year-old that was so excited to have her first role in a bigger film. So I promised her, I said, I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to write a story for you, and you're going to be in it. And I'm sure that her and her parents knew my heart was in the right place, but after what happened, they probably didn't think it was going to happen. So it was such a great feeling to finish the project, to cast her as I promised her, and she brings so much beauty to the movie. So Clay, the character that I play, as we were talking about earlier, he tried so many different avenues to achieve a level of greatness in something so he could go back into the neighborhood and help kids like him with the same mental health challenge that he has, same background. And it didn't quite pan out for him, but through this young girl, Abby, that Violet plays, he's able to live a dream through her. And I don't want to give the ending away, but he mentors her and coaches her, and that's how the movie gets tied together at the end. And it's such a beautiful moment to see him working. There's a montage of him working with her and training with her that's really special. And you could see the joy in Clay's eyes, because a lot of the movie you're seeing the heaviness of his heart. Mm-hmm. And in the end, you see the joy of him preparing her for her destiny. Mm-hmm. And he finally is able to have maybe not a huge dream where he can go back and, like an NFL quarterback, into a neighborhood and help on that type of level, but he's able to achieve a dream.
So Jarrett, what's next on your dream list? What else do you have for us coming? Do you have some visions of what else you're going to be doing?
Yeah, so I wanna take this movie to the end. I won't stop until it gets in the theaters, just because there's too much riding at it. Again, it's not. We felt like we made a very artful project with a lot of things to say within the fabric of the movie, but it's also what we can do with the success of the movie. these kids, their lives are dependent on it. And I hate to be dramatic, but it's just the way it is. It's 30 years later. The situation is still the same in the neighborhoods we're talking about, and it's got to stop. And we're just so excited to be a part of that. But in order to be a part of it, I have to get this movie out there the way I know we can. And because, as you know, I work really, really hard as an engineer, but that type of money in that industry is just enough to feed your family, which I'm so blessed for and so grateful for. But when you have this vision, like you do too, to want to help others on a really massive scale in a lot of different areas, you need the funding to be able to do that. So I'm going to take this, to the end so that we can help these kids. And then after that, I want to make another movie, that original film, which was set at Mercy Home, a lot of it. It's
the one you and I have talked about for
right,
many, many
for all
years.
these years. It's written, it's ready to go. Yeah. It needed a lot more money than this movie needs. But the hope is, once you make something that people like and feel, that you get your opportunity to do the next one. So that's the story for that. But I had an opportunity to have our mutual friend Jeff Conway interview me, and that was so overwhelming, because I've watched him interview every celebrity under the sun, and everybody loves him, adores him.
So Jeff is a buddy of ours. We've also known Jeff, and I worked on a couple of projects together. We went through some really rough times together, so we're close. I mean, I think of him like a brother. Love him.
He is one of the most
Now he's doing these incredible Forbes interviews and just interviewing all kinds of celebrities and
He's
stuff.
phenomenal talent and just an even better person.
Yes,
so I was so overwhelmed the day that I was interviewed by him, because I felt like I was never going to have that day. And the same thing being here with you, I'm very overwhelmed.
Thank you.
I've always thought about it and dreamed of being able to talk to you.
I'm so glad you're here.
No, it's
and it's great to see your dreams coming true, because that's what we want for our friends.
It's overwhelming, because there's nights where you don't think it's ever going to happen. No matter how hard you work. And it's scary, because you have this vision and you can't make it happen, and all the years they keep coming by. But once you get there and you finally get something done, it's so overwhelming, and it's so great to share.
Well, thanks for coming and sharing, Embody a Better You. It's now even better because of you. So, and I think it's so important, because, we get to show examples of how people, recreate their lives, or really believe in something and have a purpose behind it, and eventually it happens, and it happens bigger than you would even have had imagined. So.
Yeah, it bears more fruit than you ever thought it would, and it's so overwhelming. And thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, no, thank you. We got a lot more to do.
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching Chic Innovator. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free.